Hey, ¿qué pasa, Calexico? Welcome back to the podcast. Like always, before we begin, I want to thank a couple of people. I want to thank my friends Jake, Sergio, Camilo, and Dylan. Thank you guys for sponsoring the podcast. I also want to thank David Gastelum. If you're thinking of buying or selling a home in the Imperial or San Diego counties, make sure you contact David. He's not only a realtor, but an investor with over 20 years of experience, and he'll teach you along the way in one of the most important investments of your life. His number is 760-235-9576. Before I begin my conversation with my guest today, I just want to remind everybody that this is not an endorsement. It's just an opportunity for the candidate to come on the show and talk about themselves, and for you, the voter, to get to know them a little bit more. And today's guest is another candidate for the El Centro, but this one is for the El Centro Elementary School District. My guest today is Andrew Arevalo. Thank you for being here today.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate the willingness to allow me to come in and introduce myself. And I know we kind of went back and forth with the scheduling, so I appreciate your flexibility first and foremost. And this is, the latest that I've ever recorded a podcast. So
Same here.
I'm excited. And at the same time, I'm ready to rock it. And like I said, just thank you so much for the opportunity. It really does mean a lot. And let's get started.
Yeah. No, thank you for being here. I mean, I know you're busy with, distance learning and your campaign, and, I get why we had to do it this late and why you had to reschedule, but yeah, no worries. Before we get into the meat and potatoes of your campaign, I kind of wanted to, learn a little bit about you, because I've seen you on mainly Twitter. I think you're a little bit more active on Twitter. And I started following you when I started my Twitter account for the podcast, because I think I went to Tec de Mayo, and I started following people that were at Tec de Mayo, and then I saw like a lot of people like would retweet stuff from your Twitter account, and like you were like really popular with the teachers here in the Valley. Can you tell me a little bit about before that, tell me a little bit about yourself. Like, you were born in El Centro, you grew up in El Centro.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm a lifelong native of El Centro, and the only home I've ever known is El Centro and the Imperial Valley. So I'm a proud product of the Imperial Valley. I say that with a lot of pride, simply because I know oftentimes the narrative is, oh, well, they stayed in the Imperial Valley, right? And so I am definitely going against that narrative, in the sense of I am absolutely 100% proud to be from El Centro and from the Imperial Valley. And at the same time, I graduated from high school in Brawley. I've lived in El Centro my whole life, which is kind of odd. I was an inter-district transfer student, right? So my mom worked in Brawley, and she would take me to school in Brawley, but I lived in El Centro my whole life. So I have that perspective of being a inter-district transfer student. And at the same time, I graduated from my local Imperial Valley College. Woohoo, IVC.
Yeah, I graduated from IVC as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We got to represent our community college and be proud of it, right? And then at the same time, after that, I went and I graduated from San Diego State in Calexico, which I do not miss the drive to Calexico. I love Calexico, though. That's where my fiance is from. She's also a teacher. She's a 5th grade teacher. So I graduated from IVC, graduated from San Diego State, worked on my credential from San Diego State. And at the same time, while I was while I was going to school at San Diego State, I also taught a course through the San Diego State Research Foundation. So it was in partnership with a university in Mexico called Vizcaya de las Americas. And, it was funny. I was essentially finishing up my teaching credential, and at the same time teaching professors how to teach.
Oh, wow.
So that was my first actual teaching position. And then after that, I got hired as a 4th grade teacher for the McCabe Elementary School District. So, oftentimes people, my last name resonates within the Imperial Valley, in part because my family has been deeply rooted in our local education for the past 40 plus years. Many know my former, or my late uncle, Jimmy Arevalo. He taught in Calexico, and the last name, if it resonates, it's because he was a teacher who pulled over on his way back from San Diego. He pulled over to help somebody who had gotten in an accident. And when he pulled over to help the individual, a drunk driver came, and the drunk driver struck my tío, Jimmy, my uncle Jimmy, and the person that he was trying to help. Unfortunately, they both passed away at the scene, and he's definitely been part of my history, my legacy, my identity. And at the same time, my father, who is on his 43rd year in education. Shout out to Greg Arevalo for being an inspiration. I'm on my, 6th year of education, 7th if you want to count when I taught at San Diego State. And I can't imagine what, next year will look like, let alone 35 years from now, right? So he has experienced just about every change in education, within these past 43 years. And he's definitely been, someone who has inspired me to be an educator, but at the same time to try to support our community and do more. So my father is still teaching, and he teaches out of Heber. My big brother is a high school principal out in Hopeville, Anthony Arevalo, and then my fiance, Stephanie Vizcara, teaches at Desert Garden, so right across the street from Buckland Park. My sister-in-law also teaches at McCabe with myself. I'm a 4th grade teacher at McCabe, as I mentioned earlier. And then I have cousins. Tito Arevalo teaches out at Calexico. Lisa Arevalo teaches at St. Mary. So essentially, if you have the last name Arevalo, you don't have a choice, but you have to do teaching. and I say that, proud, because, I absolutely love education. And, I'm humbled to walk in the same, the legacy that my father, my tío Jimmy, and even my tía Tita, that they all established for myself as an educator. Because if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now.
Yeah, it's crazy because I kind of grew up in education, because when I was a student in middle school now in De Anza, I had this teacher, Mr. Walter Lewis. Shout out to Mr. Lewis. And when I went to high school, he would come over to junior high and help him tutor or whatnot. So, and even help him with I think they had like math field days. And I would, volunteer and help them out, in the weekends and have this event. And so I've been because now I work in Calexico High School. So I've been in education for 20 plus years, as a student, and, after that working and for the district. And, but in the beginning, I really wanted to be a teacher, especially elementary teacher. But then, working with all these teachers and hearing them, kind of like struggle with getting credentials and all these things that you have to, go through to become a teacher. It kind of like killed that dream to become a teacher. So to me, it's like, you talk so well about, your educational career, like being in education and how your family. So like your main inspiration was your family. I'm assuming, right?
Absolutely. My father and my father and my mother, they both worked in our local fields. My father started working in the fields in 6th grade. It wasn't a choice. He had to. And, we have to, as this new generation, we honor and we respect those who have paved the path for us, right? And my parents in particular. And, I've seen the work that he's done, the legacy that he's established, and it has definitely been inspiring to walk in his footsteps, but at the same time, walk in my own, right? And run for the Centro Elementary School Board. So, my dad always tells me that, he always wanted what was best for my brother and I. So, he graduated with his bachelor's, and he said, so because I graduated with my bachelor's, mijo, then that means that you and Anthony have to at least get your master's, right? So my brother and I both got our master's in education. So I went through a 1.5 year program. I completed it in roughly 9 months because I doubled up on my courses and I wanted to be done with it. But, speaking to your point, being an educator is tough. Just going through the different programs, and the years that you have to dedicate to this, right? To the schooling. I mean, it's insane. I think when I look back on it, I probably have about at least 8 to 9 years of education. That's with my associates, my bachelor's, my teaching credential, and my master's, right? So if I would have gone a little bit further, I would have gotten my doctorate. And, I think at some point when this campaign's all over and have kids, and I look back, I'll definitely get started on my doctorate because I that's definitely one of my biggest passions is education in general, and not just advocating for it for our community, but also walking into it for myself, right? So I'd like to be the first Arevalo doctor in education, and I'm excited. At the same time, a bit nervous.
Yeah, and I mean, you're not, the run-of-the-mill, teacher. You've done way more you were teaching professors how to teach, and I know that you've given, lectures at like Q conferences and all these things. Like, can you tell us a little bit more of, with, besides, being a teacher, like you've done other things? Can you tell us a little bit more of those things that you've done?
Absolutely. Well, I'm humbled to have had the opportunity to, lead from my classroom, but at the same time, lead change in education on a local level, but also at the same time on a national level. So I am currently a board member of our local Imperial Valley Q board affiliate. For those of you who do not know what Q stands for, it just means Computer Using Educators. And it is the largest West Coast nonprofit organization that provides professional development for teachers, administrators, stakeholders across California. And at this point, they've breached like the nation. So Q is, it is recognized across the nation throughout education. And so I serve on our board as our local affiliate board as a director of innovation. And my first venture into Q actually was roughly, I want to say like 2.5 years ago now. So 2.5 years ago, I attended my first conference, and I remember seeing like this huge community of educators, right? Just people who had the passion, who were innovating, who were doing things that I had never seen before, right? And I was like, my gosh, like I've never seen anything like this before. These are my people, I'm right at home. This is where I'm at. And, I left that conference just being so inspired to do more, and in particular to share more, right? So I went as a newbie to this conference, and I remember being at the conference, and they showed there was roughly, I want to say like 8,000 people at the conference, right? First of all, in Palm Springs. And I remember they showed a huge video on a Jumbotron screen, and they were announcing the awards for Q. And one of them was for the Q Emerging Teacher of the Year, which recognizes an educator that is in his or her first 7 years of their career, recognizes them out of 27,000 members, and they're selected. They get to go up on this big main stage, on the same stage as a keynote. And I remember seeing that, right, and just telling myself like, that's going to be me next year. And I was so like determined. I was like, I know that's going to be me. And the only reason I'm not there right now is because I hadn't heard about this organization before, right? And so I remember, kind of after that experience, I was really just motivated and inspired to do more, in particular to share more, right? So I remember seeing a speaker, and he was giving a session, and I said to myself, well, how come you're not up here right now on the stage presenting, right? And I said, I know I could do a better job than this guy, and that's not knocking him.
Yeah.
But it was a reality. It was like, you're a current fourth grade teacher. You should be up there. Andrew, what's stopping you? So after that conference, the really cool thing about Q is that they have roughly, I think, 17 affiliates spread throughout California and Nevada. So I made my way to the different affiliates and their different mini conferences, and I got to practice, sharing what was going on in my classroom, but at the same time, bringing everything that I was learning back to our community. And so I made a name for myself in that sense, and I got some recognition. And then the following year, 2019, I won the Q Emerging Teacher of the Year out of 27,000 members. And it was like, I was humbled, but at the same time, like I said, I was confident that I could do it, that I could be there, that I could represent the Imperial Valley, and that I could show the nation that Imperial Valley has incredible and amazing teachers as well, right? I mean, oftentimes we are, in a sense, forgotten, and we're kind of overlooked, in particular for some of our neighbors, like San Diego or Palm Springs. But it's like, hey, here you have this fourth grade teacher from El Centro who's won this national award, and then the following year, which is this year, I got a call in early February, and the call was from the Q director at the time, and they offered me the keynote for this coming conference, which is next month. So fingers crossed, right, that I get all that done and submitted, because at the same time, I'm campaigning and doing distance learning, and it is such an honor to be the keynote of this organization and to really be the person that everyone's going to see on the main stage. The really cool thing, right, is that with distance learning and the pandemic, I can't go to Sacramento where this conference would have been held at, but I am going to be giving the keynote out of my fourth grade classroom, and it will be live streamed. So they're going to send their camera crew and everything to my fourth grade classroom, and it'll be completely different, right? It'll have the style of like a TED Talk, and I'm just excited, because I went to that first Q conference and it set the tone, and it sent me down this path, right? And it gave me the confidence to present, to share, to speak. And at the same time, I amassed a pretty good following on social media. So I have roughly 12,000 followers on Twitter. But in particular, these are all educators. These are administrators. These are the other Andrew Arevalos from across the nation that I've been able to communicate with and develop these friendships with. And it's awesome because anytime I run into an issue or a problem with my students, I'm able to reach out to the community, to my friends in Texas and New York, in Florida, wherever. And it's something that I definitely have worked to gain. And at the same time, because of this Q experience, I've also been fortunate to gain recognition on a national level with particularly the Department of Education. So I have been working with the U.S. Department of Education for a couple of different panels. We're actually meeting again next month. And we are focusing on distance learning, right? So they want to know how distance learning is going, and they're seeking, the advice and the perspective of Andrew Arevalo, the fourth grade teacher from El Centro. So it is nice to be a voice for our community, and more importantly, to be at the table, right, where some decisions are made and where sometimes policy is affected on a national level. But I will share that being in those types of rooms is absolutely terrifying. Everyone has their PhD, their doctorate, and I'm here at this table. But at the same time, I've come to realize that when I do have those opportunities, I have to make the most of them. And what that means is speaking up for our El Centro, for the Imperial Valley, for our community, and really giving the perspective of a border-based community, right? And that's something that they don't often hear. And so I want them to be empathetic of our families and our teachers and our students and our community here. And so, that's a little bit about the Q. And like I said, I'm really excited for it. At the same time, nervous.
Yeah, I didn't know your story and how, you went from being just an attendee to Q to like be the keynote this upcoming year. and now, having, like you said, having all these connections and have been part of these boards and all these groups, that, yeah, it's crazy. How do we clone you, make more Arevalos for the valley?
Well, it's funny, it comes from a place of the heart, passion, right? And at the same time, it also comes from the perspective of seeing what's outside of the valley and getting the opportunity to travel, to tour the nation, and to learn from others who are in the field, but getting that perspective, right? And then just broadening your own perspective and being like, oh my gosh, like, why didn't I think about this or this or this, right? And so you're able to build off of what you are already doing, right? And now just taking it to that next level, which is exactly what we need right now for distance learning.
Yeah. You being somebody that's, like you said, like travel the nation, talk to teachers from all over the nation. Some of the problems that, maybe the problems that we have here in the valley aren't necessarily the same problems that people from, I don't know, like say New York or Miami are facing, because we, like you said, we're a border town.
Absolutely.
How do we like kind of like get out of that mind where like we go to like say, oh, it's because this program's working in San Diego or in LA or in Palm Springs? How do we get out of that mindset and say, have them like think about us, like, oh, in Calexico, it's a community where there's high low income kids, and how do we make them look at us as an inspiration, or look at something that we're implementing and have implemented in communities like ours?
Absolutely. Well, it starts with, first and foremost, empowering teachers so that they have the opportunity to get outside of the Imperial Valley, right? So, we have wonderful and amazing professional development within our local community, but at the same time, we really do have to broaden the perspective of our administrators and our stakeholders and our teachers by empowering all of them and giving them the opportunity to go and see what is happening outside of our community. And when we do that, we gain the perspective of learning from others, right? But at the same time, developing those relationships that stretch across the nation, that stretch from state to state, that stretch globally. So I had the perspective of talking to educators in Africa, Australia, in different countries, and learning from them, right? So if we want to shed light on what is happening in the Imperial Valley, then we have to give our stakeholders an opportunity to leave here, right, and learn, but at the same time share, what are we doing here in the Imperial Valley? What is working in El Centro? What is working in Calexico? What isn't working, right? But that spans from essentially getting outside of the bubble, right? And in order to understand that fully, you have to immerse yourself in a different context. It's easy to get caught up in the same narrative if you are immersed in this bubble per se, but if you exit that bubble and you see something else, something different, then you're able to get the perspective of like, oh, I didn't think about that, and at the same time, we feed fire to the narrative of the different Andrew Arevalos across our county. I may have gotten this national recognition, and I say that humbly because I am not the only Imperial Valley teacher that is deserving of this honor. I say that coming from a place of, I am just one educator here in our local Imperial Valley, but there are several Andrew Arevalos here who haven't gotten the opportunity. So we have to give them the spotlight. We have to empower them to leave Imperial Valley and then come back and then add their new ideas, so that they synthesize this new information that they learn, and they remix it. They remix it to fit Calexico, to fit the border community, to fit our stakeholders there, to fit McCabe, to fit Holtville, to fit Brawley, Imperial, right? But it does start with empowering our teachers and giving them the access, equal access, opportunities, and two, like even what you are doing with Calexico, that's not a very common practice. So of providing MacBooks, and just think of the opportunities that those kids are going to have. I can't even remember. I think if I look back at my own educational experience, I got to go to the computer lab a couple of times. Do you know what I mean? And now these high school kids are getting MacBooks. I mean, just they're the future. And Calexico is doing an awesome and incredible job with that. But at the same time, Calexico is just one example of some of the awesomeness that's happening in the Imperial Valley. So we have to share that, right? And we have to be willing to learn and be willing to listen, right? That's the biggest piece, is willing to accept that there are different ways of doing things. And at the same time, there are different individuals who are ready to take the helm, just like myself, who are ready to lead, but they need an opportunity. They need access. They need support.
Do you feel that, as Imperial Valley, teachers from Bali, from Centro, Calexico, do you feel that, we first kind of need to perfect our community, as a valley, or maybe be a little bit more as a group, and because you're saying we need to go out and talk to these teachers from other places. Is it a good start to start locally, have a group of teachers that are on constant communication and sharing what's working in their classroom, and then maybe expand, like you said, to other places outside the valley?
Absolutely. I mean, within our local Q affiliate, we have roughly 200 members spread throughout the Imperial Valley, right? So we do have an incredible partnership already there. So we have educators that are working together, collaborating, sharing ideas across our community, right? So that exists on many degrees already. There are lines of communication. There are teachers sharing best practices, sharing innovative ways to innovate for 21st century education. But at the same time, like I said, is how do we build upon that? How do we build after that? What comes next, right? And what comes next is after those lines of communication and the relationships are defined, and we have those awesome collaborations across different districts, which already exists, like I said, here in our community, then we move beyond that. And beyond that means going outside and seeing what our neighbors are doing. Neighbors, whether that's San Diego, whether that is Texas, wherever, but learning from these different groups, right? And bringing that back, but at the same time, taking what we are doing as the Imperial Valley and taking it to other communities, right? Taking it to San Diego, taking it to, wherever. Like I can tell you, as a fourth grade educator who's been part of the GATE program at my district, and also we started the first esports team, K through 8th team in our community. Well, I should say 3rd through 8th, sorry. 3rd through 8th. That's not a common practice, right? So if you look historically across esports and throughout the nation, you typically see middle school and high school. You don't see elementary. So San Diego can learn from us, Texas can learn from us, Florida can learn from us, New York can learn from us. So it starts with the narrative of Andrew Arevalo leaving the Imperial Valley to go and present, and at the same time taking what he is doing as a best practice. Because if we really do care about education, we care about education for our students across the entire nation, regardless of their zip code, regardless of their state, right? We care about education. We care about it on a macro level scale for the entire US. We want what's best for all of our students. And that simply means outside of the Imperial Valley as well. So hopefully, I kind of clarified that.
Have you visited High Tech High in San Diego?
You know what? I have not visited High Tech High, but I have presented at one of their neighboring schools. I think it was, I want to say Design 39. It was one of their schools out in that area, and I got to go and be a part of it and learn from them, actually. And then I was asked to go and present there. And that was actually supposed to happen, sometime in the next couple of months, but I don't foresee that happening anytime soon, but I have presented for the San Diego County Office of Education on numerous occasions. And I was actually asked to be the keynote for their upcoming conference, but unfortunately, it didn't work out because of the fact that I was already keynoting for Fall Q.
I know that you're somebody that, kind of like really thinks through, right? And, where you're at right now in terms of, you're, being a teacher and then doing all these things like for Q, and even for the local Q. Do you feel that at this point, you're a better asset to our students locally, running for, the school board?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a great question. First and foremost, I definitely want to acknowledge the experience of those that have come before, right? Because like I mentioned earlier, they're the ones that have paved the path for this new generation. And at the same time, building off of that is, I'm a current 4th grade elementary teacher teaching in distance learning, teaching smack in the middle of a crisis, right? And the reality is we as a nation, as a community, are facing 2 crises. One crisis is COVID-19, the other is distance learning. Distance learning creates a lot of inequities that have kind of been highlighted by COVID-19 in particular, and especially for our community with access to devices, as well as accessibility to actual good, efficient internet, right? Even for myself, I'm in a separate room of my house right now because earlier today in my office, the internet stopped working there. So right now I'm like in my bedroom and my lighting's all weird, right? Because I'm not set up for this. And imagine I'm a teacher with means to have internet for myself. And if I can't even get it right here in my own home, what does that mean for our community? What does it mean for our students who live in, rural parts of our community, of our county? What does it mean for the students who don't have the support that they need at their home? It's really sad, because COVID-19 has created all of these, not necessarily created them, but really shed light into terms of what has already been here and existed. And now it's kind of like uncovered the reality, right? And not just in our local community, but across the nation. So now the neat thing is, now that the blanket has been pulled off, the cover has been taken off, we're able to see the transparency of the root of these systemic issues. We're able to address them, right? We're able to fix them. And it starts by first identifying what they are. And I think as a current practicing elementary educator, like I said, who is fluent in 21st century education, who is fluent in our new Senate Bill 98, that provides accountability for California teachers and distance learning, who is at the table of, with the Department of Education, talking about education on a macro level, and at the same time has gotten to go and tour the nation. I can say 100% without a doubt that I am unequivocally the most relevant and the most the best choice to lead our stakeholders, right? I don't say that in an arrogant way. I'd much rather be hanging out with my fiance right now. I'm talking to my mom on the phone because I miss her. I'm talking to my dad on the phone. And the reality is that you come to the realization that I've had this epiphany that Andrew Arevalo, you are the best choice for your community, and you need to step up. You need to do more. So like I said, it is coming from a place of my heart because I'm passionate about El Centro. I'm passionate about my community, about the students here, about the families here, and moving through this obstacle, this mental obstacle of, hey, Andrew, like you're going to be nervous and it's scary and blah, blah, blah. Okay, like you have to get beyond that, right? Because at the end of the day, you're not fighting for the clout, the status, the recognition. I could care less about that. What I'm fighting for is all of the other Andrew Arevalos living in our community on the east side, on the west side, on the south side, on the north side. I'm fighting for that. I'm fighting for our students. And as a current practicing educator, I am in the best position to be empathetic of what they are going through, because I am going through that and I'm living through it as well. It's hard for people who have never experienced this to fully be empathetic of our families and our students and our teachers. That is a reality. You can't understand me if you've never experienced what I'm going through. And I'm experiencing it. I'm living through it. I'm stressed out like every teacher, in the nation. I go to sleep stressed out, having to worry about these logs that the state is mandating, which is just ridiculous at this point. And at the same time, I'm at the table where some of those discussions are being held, and I'm trying to influence change so that we are empathetic of our families. And so I can say 100% without a doubt, I am the best, the most relevant to lead our school and to lead our district for El Centro Elementary School District.
How do you separate yourself? Like, because we have teachers union and classified unions. Like, how do you separate yourself from that? Like, so that there's no question about you're doing it because you're taking their side because you're a teacher and whatnot.
Absolutely. Well, the great thing is that I come from the perspective of I may serve my official title at McCabe is a fourth grade teacher, but at the same time I've worked on the district level with my admin team in particular, and I've been fortunate to help write some of the policy for my district. So I do kind of already understand the balance between the administration side as well as the union side, because I do it right now within my own district, and I have the empathy to understand both sides because I operate on both sides, right? I help my admin team as best as I can, in particular with policy for distance learning, with providing professional development for our teachers throughout the summer. So I was part of the team that led that. And at the same time, I often get this question, and just to clarify, it's, well, how can you be a teacher at McCabe and run for the El Centro Elementary School District? Isn't that like a conflict of interest? And in short, no, it is not. If anything, it puts me in the position to understand what I'm doing more effectively than any other current board member, simply because, as I mentioned, I am teaching in the classroom right now, but I don't live within the McCabe district. I live within the El Centro School District, right? So I live right behind St. Mary's Church. I walk outside, I see the big cross every day, say my little prayer, and that's how I start my mornings. So I live in the El Centro Elementary School District, but I teach at the McCabe side. So there is a clear distinction there. And at the same time, I've walked per se in both paths, right? I've supported my administrators. I've also supported my union. So I do understand both sides, and I am empathetic. And the thing that I could say that really just helps me out the most is, I'm a great listener. I'm always willing to listen to both sides of the story and to understand how decisions that are made affect both sides, right? Affect all sides, I should say. There's, with stakeholders in our families, we have teachers, we have administrators, we have families, we have students. So there are several people, several stakeholders that we must consider. And because of my experience, I am in the position to understand and make the best and most appropriate decisions with the utmost confidence, knowing that my decisions very well affect everyone. And I am in the position to listen, and at the same time, be empathetic of our stakeholders.
I asked this to Carlos on Saturday. If, say, like, whoever got elected got one wish, you would be able to implement anything to the school district, what would be your one wish?
Oh man, one wish is a hard one. I every time I give my prompt, like I give a writing prompt to my students, like, oh, you have one wish. They're always like, Mr. Arevalo, for my one wish, can I wish for like 3 more wishes? And I find myself wanting to do that, but but the reality is, for El Centro, I'd say the biggest one wish is truly trying to improve our math and science proficiency. The reality is that we have, as a district for El Centro, we have 80% of our students who aren't meeting the basic science standard on the most recent California assessment. At the same time, we have 67% of our students, El Centro students, who aren't meeting the basic math standard, who aren't meeting the basic comprehension for math, right, on the most recent state assessment. So the reality is we have these dismal scores, we have these gaps that they truly aren't closing. If anything, they're widening. And if we look at them on a 4-year basis, we see that the scores have remained relatively stagnant. So what that means is that we have these kids who are graduating junior high, they're entering high school, they already have these gaps, and those gaps just become systemic issues, right? They become deeper, more rooted problems, and they enter high school with these gaps, which makes it hard for them to just have the basic understanding when they get to high school. And then when they graduate high school, if they choose to enter our workforce or if they choose to enter college, they are behind in a sense already, right? And it's evident with these scores. It's evident with our unemployment rate. It's evident with many stats, with many statistics. We can just pull up a number of data, whether that's qualitative or quantitative, and we can truly see the inequities, in particular with math and science. And so I am a huge advocate for science and math, particularly STEM, and I'd love to bridge that gap, right? I'd love to support our stakeholders, our kids. I'd love to make sure that when they graduate 8th grade, that they are 100% confident and capable and ready for high school. Because what we're doing is not just setting them up for high school, but we're setting them up for life, right? I remember every Saturday, my dad, I really hated doing this, but every Saturday, my dad, I was not allowed to watch cartoons, first of all. Every Saturday, he would wake my brother and I up at about 7 a.m, and he would put me to do math. So I had to work on multiplication, division, subtraction, addition, and my brother had to work on Spanish, right? So, so math has literally been ingrained, from an early age in terms of why it is so important. And it's not just about being good at math, but it's taking that and applying it to your life. It's taking it and understanding as a 30-year-old, which is my age, I bought my first set of apartments at the age of 25. I bought my home at 27. We refinanced at 29. But all of that understanding comes from having a solid math foundation. And even, winning the local, at IVC, I won the local mathematics department award for elementary education, right? So if we instill that foundation in math and science for our kids, we're not only setting them up to do well in school, right? But the reality is to do well in life. That's what I want for our students. I want them to go and to be able to leave, if they choose to leave confidently, or if they choose to enter our local workforce, to do so in a way where we've given them the basic foundation to have the greatest opportunity so that they are successful, and that's truly what I want to do. I remember when I was recording a video for my introduction, I had a man come up to me, and he was a transient. He was, shirtless, had a bunch of tattoos. You could tell, he kind of lived in the streets, and, he just wanted someone to talk to. and I listened to him. I said, hey, sir, how's your day going? Because he came right into the video as we were recording it. and so I listened to him, and he talked about his elementary experience. It's funny because he was probably about 40 years old, but the thing that he remembered was his teacher, his elementary teacher. He remembered when the school gave him his bike. He remembered when he won the jumping jacks competition. And yet look at what essentially he was thrust into. into a life of poverty, into a life of living on the streets. And granted, I'm not saying that that is the narrative for everyone, but even if it's a narrative for one person, that's all it takes is for us to understand that we have issues within our local education system, and they need to be addressed. And it's hard to address them if you aren't living and breathing education like I am right now.
Yeah, because we hardly see. I mean, I'm just speaking out of my top of my head, but I don't think I've known school board member that is currently teaching, or maybe even like a teacher in the past. I know Calexico might have. I think Mike Castillo was a teacher. Mm-hmm. I don't know if he was a teacher or he was like, as I know he worked for ICOE for a while, and I think Cito's like a counselor, but you hardly see teachers or people like in education that are making decisions when it comes to like school board.
Absolutely, and I think that stems from the issue, not the issue, but the fact that when you teach, your whole heart is in the classroom. You give up a lot of stuff, and you really dedicate yourself to your kids, to their families. You dedicate yourself to your stakeholders, and your priority, essentially becomes your kids in the classroom. And it's hard to turn off the switch sometimes, right? But in my case, it is coming from a place of, okay, like I've done this in my classroom and I'm doing it efficiently. So, what can I do to better serve my community? So not just my local stakeholders at McCabe, but my stakeholders in El Centro, right? And so I think the reason we don't see that enough is because our teachers dedicate everything that we have, dedicate every being of who we are to our kids, and we serve them to the highest degree that we can. Just like my dad, like I said, 43 years of dedication, and it takes a lot to be able to kind of step out of that a little bit and be like, hey, I can also do this, right? But the reality is, yeah, we can do that. That can be the narrative. It just takes an individual or a few who are brave enough to attempt to try it, and to attempt to try to change education and benefit our community and really create a positive experience for our families here in El Centro.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we're almost at 50 minutes.
Oh my gosh!
It doesn't feel like it, huh?
No, I honestly, I thought it was like 20 minutes.
No, it's been almost, like we're at 47 minutes more or less.
Wow.
But and it's getting late, and I know you have stuff to do. But I wanted to give you a chance to touch on anything that I didn't ask you. Any other points that any final thoughts that you might have?
Well, first and foremost, I just wanted to give you a shout out. I know what this podcast means to our community. I love the fact that you get to provide an objective, unbiased opinion on providing information for our community. And it's nice to partner with you, to be able to introduce myself, to share who I am, my identity, my background. And with that, for those of you listening, I will leave you with this. And the reality is, El Centro, our community, the Imperial Valley historically has not been welcome to change. That is a reality. And we have an educator, we have current educators, I should say, who are running for different positions across the county. We have people with kids in the actual districts. We have people who are truly passionate about stepping up and taking on this new role. But in my case, I cannot thank you for the support that you have offered me thus far in my campaigning process. And at the same time, for those of you who are still kind of on the fence, please understand that I am willing to listen. I'm willing to work. And more than anything, I'm willing to be a partner with you and an ally with you, so that we can change education, so that we can create a better place for our children, for our families. This is my home. I'm passionate about our people. I want what's best so that one day when my little Andrew is running around, I can, say that he's receiving the best education possible. But we need educators who understand education today. That's the reality. And with that, I can't thank you enough for the support. I've got plenty of yard signs to go around. And, come November 3rd, please vote Andrew Arevalo for El Centro Elementary School District. Thank you so much. It means a ton to me. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Well, Andrew, thank you for your time. I want to remind everybody that this is not an endorsement. This is just an opportunity for Andrew and other candidates to come on the podcast and, let themselves, be known and who they are, why they're running, why they're the candidate to vote for. And like I've always said, anybody that wants to be on the podcast that's running for any position is more than welcome. Just make sure that you email me at Pasa Calexico. And, this is just me, a hobby. So if I can't get to everybody, I'm sorry, but, it's my hobbies. I have a job, a wife, a son that, I have to attend as well too. But, I try my best to talk to everybody. And he
is flexible, and he is very flexible and willing to work with you. Let me say that.
But yeah, I want to thank everybody for listening. I want to remind everybody to keep wearing their face mask, wash your hands, social distance. Let's keep this trend of, these low numbers going. Flu season is upon us like pretty shortly. So if you want to, I'm not saying you should, but you should maybe take your flu shot. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for your support, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.